We're on.
He's got his sunglasses on again.
We're recording, guys.
Very good. Very good. Well, welcome back to our next interview, and thank you for joining us. I'm here, David Waltzer, with my partner Brian Kozlow, and we have a very special interview guest for you this morning. We are here today with Grady Palmer. Grady Palmer is a very long-standing personal friend of ours. We've known each other for many, many years. Grady is actually one of those people that I rely upon as a mentor and a strategic advisor for myself and Brian as well. He is quite adept in international diversification and offshore cash flow. Grady is an international real estate broker and franchise owner with Real Estate Executives Inc., and he owns the boutique franchise in Panama, which is very unique. And he has brought many clients to the Unicorn for purchase. Grady happens to be a very, very high integrity individual. He has an extraordinary depth of knowledge and understanding in geopolitics and changes and events. Grady is actually quite unique in being able to, there's so much information that comes out on a daily basis on geopolitics, especially in our hemisphere, and he's incredible about filtering all of that massive data on a daily basis and kind of filtering it down, and we Grady for those updates, and really quite unique. Grady's a rare individual. Grady is very committed, and you're going to get this from our interview, how committed Grady is to service and contribution of others. So, great friend, great advisor, great mentor, and really wealth of knowledge that Grady brings to the table. So, with that, we want to welcome you, Grady, and I have a few interview questions that Grady has graciously agreed to answer with us today. So, welcome, Grady.
Well, good morning, Brian and David. Great to have the opportunity to visit with you two today. It's always an honor and a pleasure to do so. And David, thank you for your very kind words, and appreciate that. And also to the audience, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to visit with you as well and share some of the insights and some of the things that I've discovered over a period of time that has drawn my interest and my focus from a business perspective, as well as from an investment perspective on a personal level and on a family level to Panama in particular. You know, it's been an interesting journey. A few years ago, I began to recognize some real storm clouds on the horizon, and I know Brian and David have also noticed those going back several years, that things were beginning to change quite dramatically in the world, both on a monetary level as well as economic, political, and that there was a certain element of threat and concern about that. And I'll tell you why. One of the things that I feel that's really interesting today as an American and as a patriot is this unacknowledged risk of putting everything into an all U.S. environment as a strategy for wealth preservation. And I really believe that by having that mindset of an all U.S. Kind of game plan, that we're actually ignoring some very important factors and reducing the shield, if you will, of guarding our assets. And with the sovereign debt nation situation that we are facing, not only here in the United States as a possibility of insolvency, but in Europe and also in Asia, in particular Japan, that is in a very, very severe situation. And what took me on this journey, Brian and David, was I was and I am a family trustee for my parents' inheritance game plan. And, there's some very strong legal mandates as a trustee. It's not something you take lightly when you're dealing with other people's inheritances and wishes of your family that they have in place. And I had the honor of being in that situation. But that also called me to consider very carefully the defensive strategies and preserving wealth for my family if things got any worse. And that really was the kickoff point for me to begin to look at what are the options and considerations, what are the strategies that the smart people, where's the money flowing to? We've all heard the term, the term of follow the money, or, who moved my cheese, if you read that book. So that journey took me into looking at what is going on here, and that was a motivator that got me involved in looking internationally. And we're facing some serious tipping points. I think we all know that. And the greatest wealth transfer in human history from the middle class and even the upper class is migrating. And it's really migrating to the ultimate wealthy people, the elite, so to speak. And so we have to be in a position where we have to defend ourselves. And many countries have been through the situations that we're in and the risk factors of losing wealth. For example, I think it was George Washington who said, it's one of my favorite quotes, he said, if we don't learn from our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And I'm kind of sensing that a lot of us, I think a lot of us, Brian and David, are still in a little bit of denial, but I think a lot of Americans, a lot of patriots, a lot of people that love their country, they love their family, are now in a situation where they're in a state of wonderment that things are happening that they don't clearly understand, but they're willing to get educated. They're willing to think out of the box. They're willing to prepare themselves and to get ready strategically to reposition themselves and their thought processes. And I've always said that the problem is not really the problem, any problem that we face. The real problem is how we think about the problem. And we're in a situation where we want to mitigate risk. We don't want to increase risk. And, of course, just recently, some news came out about the middle class that they've lost 40% of their wealth and possibly are going to lose a whole lot more. Obviously, the housing industry, a lot of people have determined that their house was an asset versus a liability, and of course that became an accumulation of wealth. But now that that's wiped out, 30, 40, 50%, sometimes they're talking about 60% loss in the asset value of their home. So that's kind of the backdrop of what we are facing. And if you think about the problem and you think about political solutions using the monetary policy of continually the print enormous amounts of dollars or fiat currency, we as Americans have to recognize that what's happening is the purchasing power is being debased significantly. As a matter of fact, just in the last, I'd say, 10 years or so, maybe a little bit more, we've lost 40% of our purchasing power through the U.S. dollar. And I think a lot of times we don't kind of recognize that that's creating a negative rate of return on our assets and on our wealth. And the question becomes, how do we turn that around? How do we move ourselves into a strategic mindset where we can actually create and prosper? And so the government has, there's a few things that are happening. Number one is they only have two choices left. They got two bullets left in the gun, so to speak. They can inflate, which is the typical strategy in all world history, or they can default, go insolvent, and go bankrupt as they already are. So obviously, looking at history, they use the inflation game plan. And they use taxes, and they debase the currency, which stimulates inflationary trends. And we begin to lose our wealth. It erodes before our very eyes. And according to the White House, from a tax perspective, by 2020, that's not very far away, the taxes to all of us as Americans are expected to double based on the White House website. So when we look at these things and we begin to consider the trend lines, the current events that have already built into current trends, so to speak, we as investors, we as preserving wealth, we as family members have to think a little bit differently. And I drew the conclusions out of all the options that I personally have in looking at investments, looking at preserving wealth, looking at geopolitics, the political system, the financial system, the economic system, the optimism or lack of optimism of a country continuing that grow and prosper, all arrows pointed to Panama. And when I say that, I have a lot of personal clients. One in particular comes to mind that is very, very concerned about retirement. They're concerned about privatization, of pensions no longer being the case, but moving to a nationalization and capital controls of retirements. I believe there's somewhere around this. Maybe Brian and David have a better number, but I think it's somewhere around $7 trillion of money sitting there in the United States that the government would certainly like to have an interest in that, and to pay off debt or to control capital movement and so on. But I have a client I want to tell you about, and it's a client that has been very successful in life. The two of them have accumulated close to about $2 million over their lifetime. And I talked to her name is Sally. I'll just give the first name. And Sally expressed to me that they have not seen any change in wealth creation and growth in their portfolio and their 401k, either one, for over 10 years. And as a matter of fact, their concern was not only the erosion, because they've actually gone backwards, which is called zero rate of return or negative rates of return. When you add in taxes and you add in inflation and you have a zero return interest on those investments, if you stay on that path and calculate it, you look at the debasement of your current, asset value, they continue to go down. So with that in mind, she expressed a great deal of concern. And she bought in. She really saw the connection of Panama from the standpoint of preserving and protecting assets, but she also saw that this was a growth environment. This was a wealth strategy. This was an investment strategy. It was a passive cash flow strategy in the commercial cash flow hospitality space with the boutique hotel that we represent, the Radisson. And so she flew in. She came out of the mortgage business and she connected all the dots, and she came to the conclusion that this was one of the most safest places on the planet in a growth environment to reallocate a portion of their assets into that, and they are absolutely thrilled. And their confidence is increased because their concern is that what if they live to be 90 years old? Where's the money coming from? So funding the second half of somebody's life is a very critical factor. The other thing that she brought up that was also really important, and I think a lot of us that are maybe watching this have the same concern, is that we want to leave a legacy for our family. We want to leave a legacy for our children. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we have our assets in a safe place that are at least stable, if not growing and prospering, so that they can be they can go through the inheritance transfer. So we have a number of things going on. We have the retirement crisis. We have the tax issue. We have inflationary issues. We have the petrodollar that could, if we lose the petrodollar as the world's reserve currency, frankly, we're gonna see the debasement of the dollar quite dramatically. It's already happening around the world. It's happening in many countries that are bypassing the dollar. Many of you that are watching this video today already know that. But the implications are somewhere between 40 and 60% debasement. And at some point that's probably going to happen with the petrodollar. And then, of course, we have monetary policy. We have currency wars. We have an expectation by, I think it's 2016 now, they project that the cost of the debt, we will be at 20 trillion in debt. I think all of us know that that's impossible to pay off. And then on top of that, we have all the unstated liabilities such as Social Security. And lastly, I think that we have to, as responsible stewards of our money and for our families and for their inheritance and protecting our spouses, we really need to consider very carefully the notion of avoiding risk, whatever it takes to avoid risk. And Americans are starting to get aware of that, and they're starting to make their decisions. And we're seeing that, as I mentioned, Sally and her husband, what they've decided to do. And we have many, many, many people that Brian and David have educated and informed and assisted them in looking objectively and looking at reality, and then beginning to provide powerful solutions in the hospitality space in Panama, one of the most successful countries, I think, in the world today by far, first world country, with many benefits that I'll speak with a little bit later. But that's the situation we're in. And we're in an ideal situation with Panama to make that transition and help people reallocate their assets. I know it's a long answer, but there's a whole lot going on in the world, and I hopefully that's a little helpful from a perspective of why we need to take action now and get involved and get educated and get informed.
Yeah, Grady, that was brilliant. Wow. I think to share with people. That is amazing. Gives people a tremendous insight, as it does for us. One of the things that we're very, very proud of is as a gentleman with your knowledge and your background, personally decided to make purchase at Unicorn, and that speaks volumes about you. It speaks volumes about the opportunity and about our relationship. So, how did you come to that conclusion? That this was an opportunity for you personally?
Well, after traveling through all of Central America and looking at South America from a distance, I actually didn't fly down there, but I did a lot of research. My wife got involved, and that was very helpful. I think it's really important for husbands and wives to have a mindset that as a family, they actually own a corporation. They have a financial institution within their family. And when people get educated, and my wife had no idea. She didn't grow up in an environment where economics and finance were something, neither did I, for that matter. But we became educated, and as a result of that, we drew shared conclusions. I was kind of on the front edge of it, looking and building relationships and getting connected, and it was really an exciting time. But you learn a lot when you do that. You learn what you don't want, and you also learn what you do want, and you meet extraordinary people like Brian and David. They have a long history of integrity, a long history of contribution and service and investing in the commercial world, and so the way this happened is it's a blessing. I met David in Salt Lake City, and we were there for a convention event, and we got introduced. And we got introduced by a shared friend, and we ended up having sushi together, and we figured we'd be together and get acquainted for about an hour. I think it was 3 hours later, David, that
at least
and a lot of sushi and a lot of conversation, and I think what David and I discovered was we had a lot of the same values and principles. We had the same investment strategy. We had the same awareness of trend lines in events that were unfolding in the United States, and we were looking for safe harbors. We were looking for safe harbors with a lot of integrity, a lot of proof, a lot of evidence behind it. And he said to me, have you ever been to Panama? And I said, I've been to every country, Belize and all this, but I've never been to Panama, and I've always wanted to go, but for some reason I never got led there. And I said, you're it, and you're the guy who's going to show me Panama. I'd like to know more about it. And David had shared his story and his background about Panama. And so I jumped on an airplane and met David, but I also met Brian, and of course, kind of in a practical way, fell in love with these two guys that had such a heart and such a passion and such a mindset of no personal agenda. There was no agenda. There was only the discovery and the wonderment of Panama as in a country that was going for what I thought was a banana republic, was already in second stage of a second world country and on the edge of a first world country. And I was just totally amazed. And I think we all are when we fly into Panama. We think we're flying into Florida. But so that's where it took place. But on a more practical level for our audience today, knowing that I was where many of you are right now, I looked at the economy of the country, the commerce of the country. It was a commerce-driven country. It was not a real estate bubble-driven country, and where there was a lot of empty buildings. And when I flew in there and I saw the canal and saw the ATM machine and I saw the cash flow to the country, I saw the Republic of Panama, the stability, the leadership of the politicians, that many of them were actually self-made millionaires and successful entrepreneurs. So I saw not only those things and the prosperity of the country, but I also looked at the middle class. I also looked at the people and the smiles on their faces and the boom that was going on. That wasn't a boom; it was a sustainable, long-term game plan by those that are in power as entrepreneurs. They were running the country like a real business, and they were in a position that I'd like to mention a little bit later on the benefits here. Are very exclusive and very unique in the world. I don't know where there's anything like this in the world that is dealing with the economies of countries worldwide, as opposed to maybe a few. So I also saw the political stability. I saw rule of law. I also saw the banking, second largest banking center in the world. I saw infrastructure. I saw growth everywhere. I saw a middle class that was growing and booming. So it was an endless list of, it was almost like being in America, except it was like maybe way back in the early stages of America's rise to power as an economic power. I saw the same parallels that I spoke about earlier, but in complete reverse. A country that's debt-free. The country that has a positive cash flow, a country that knows how to not tax their people into oblivion, and a simple country in many ways, but a very, very smart country. So I said to myself, I want to be a part of this. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually participate in a country that is moving rapidly from second. It went from first to second, and now third is now a first world country in a very short period of time. So it's an exciting time to be alive. But I think the hospitality space and the second highest demand of occupancy in the world because of the activities and commerce that's going on, I wanted to be a part of that. And that's when David and Brian showed me Unicorn and introduced me to Bruno Carnicella, the developer with worldwide recognition for what he does best, and the Radisson Park Inn, tied to a flag with international presence. All those things, and the opportunity for my wife and I looking at our options for investing internationally. And she said to me, this is the only one that makes sense. And I said, well, what do you mean? Tell me. And she said, well, number one, it's got an international flag. It's in the hospitality space, and it's in a segment of high demand and low supply. And I said, okay, tell me more. She says, well, it's a boutique hotel, and not only are you an owner in the suite, so you have an asset that is growing in value, but you also have a revenue sharing with the cash flow. So you're literally revenue sharing with a Radisson, Park Inn, and the Carlson Group and the developer. And I said, wow. And she said, by the way, it's double digit. I said, let me see that spreadsheet. So guys, that was a really tipping point to see my wife who's interested in longevity of cash flow and for her own benefits and for the family to be able to recognize it. So those were the sizzle points that caught our attention.
Very great. Very great, Grady. I'll tell you, Grady, I don't know that I could have said it any more succinctly or better or more informed. I mean,
now you know why Grady is one of our mentors. His
amazing.
Knowledge is just staggering.
Yeah, amazing.
I should probably bring my wife Irene in and let you interview her. Because what I really shared there, honestly, and I know you two feel the same way, is it's about your family, it's about their legacy through you as husbands, that we take care of our family, we protect them. And there's nothing more dangerous, I think, today, honestly, that so many people are not prepared, and it really hurts my heart, because we're moving into a position whereby we could have an enormous amount of what we spend a lifetime working for. It doesn't matter if it's a small amount or a medium or a large amount. The point is that we could easily lose that, and our families could be living in semi-poverty the rest of their lives, our children. So there's a larger story here to this of being smart and being in a position to be keeping our families out of harm's way. And I love what's going on there. There's no end in sight. They're smart, and it's an exciting time to have solutions that could have that kind of a positive impact. And everybody should know and be educated about this country, but more specifically about the projects that we uniquely and exclusively have, I think, in the world. I don't think there's any other place where you can do that kind of relationship with a hotel.
Well, super. I think
Great, Grady. Thank you so much.
I don't know what else there is to say. I think Grady did an amazing job.
I don't know what else to ask. Grady, you covered everything. Wow.
Well, listen, we want to thank you very much, Grady. I know your time is precious, and we appreciate you sharing it with us and the audience, and you're amazing as always.
Thank you so much, and thanks, folks, for joining us, and we look forward to sharing and speaking with you soon.
Okay, ciao.